welcome to Talking Triathlon this week, where two blokes sit and talk about triathlon. Last week it was Tim Ford and not me. This week it's me and not Tim Ford. But big thank you to Tyler Mislawchuk for covering me last week while I was on my holidays. And this week I am joined by Andrew Horstfall-Turner, professional triathlete and epic swimmer, to keep us company and take us on our triathlon journey. How you doing, Andrew?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me. How are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I've just climbed off the treadmill to get ready for this podcast. My marathon training is in full flow now. Now, what did I do? I did 10 times 1 kilometer repeats on the treadmill tonight. It was
Ooh,
um it was a bit grueling,
bread and butter session though.
yeah, a bit grueling, but I had to rely on my YouTube playlist come the end to get me through it.
Good stuff, good stuff.
How's your training, mate?
Yeah, good. I'm
Tell
just
me things. What's
I
new in your
didn't
world?
yeah, I just I've obviously had my off season and started to build back into a bit of training. I'm trying to get fit basically because I'm gonna go into the labs and do some kind of like baseline testing, I guess, in beginning of December. And I don't want to go into lab testing like unfit because like then the data is just basically crap. So,
What does your
um,
baseline testing involve? Is that like a 5K or a VO2 or what are we talking?
so yeah, you're gonna obviously have the mask on. It's gonna be in the lab. So, basically sub max testing. So trying
Right,
to
okay.
work out, your LT1, LT2, those nice keywords that everyone loves to hear. Um,
It's a joyous experience. I've done one of those VO2 tests before with a mask and you wear the
yeah,
hoist and all of that,
yeah.
and it was incredibly unpleasant.
And then yeah, obviously, so we jump straight after that into a VO2 test, and you basically go till failure. And I always think that the VO2 test is quite it jumps up on you because it feels great, and then all of a sudden it feels horrendous, and then it's over literally in the space of a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's very much very similar to a FPT test on the bike. You feel like a legend, and then suddenly you don't feel like a legend anymore. Yeah.
But
So
yeah, all is good. All is good.
how's
I've
your
just got
year been, mate? A year in the life of professional triathlete Andrew Horsfall-Turner.
yeah, not too bad. I definitely say it's been a very up and down year. I've had probably the highest moments of being a pro so far, obviously getting on a podium and kind of leading out some big races, that sort of thing. But I've also probably had a couple of my, I'd say, you know, worst races as a professional, in kind of very close proximity, which has been it's been an interesting year to navigate, keeping especially at the mental side of the sport, keeping kind of mentally engaged and positive and trying to work through that. Um, but I think I guess from a sporting perspective, it's probably very more common than like you think, and it's very normal to kind of have those moments of like downs and ups, and hopefully I maybe had more downs than ups this year, and hopefully that then flips next season and I have more ups than downs. And um yeah, I can still see progression, which I think is the key thing, from year to year. And yeah, I guess overall it's been yeah, interesting. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. How is that? You know, when you're a pro athlete in triathlon, it's not a sport that it doesn't feed its pro athletes easily. It's
No,
hard to
no.
survive. And there's a group at the top who are making good money, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it tapers off very quickly. How
Oh yeah,
is
mostly.
how is it keeping that motivation when things aren't going exactly as you plan them to in a year?
Uh, that's a good question. I think I probably just needed to kind of just to continually like remind myself that I am a good athlete. And I think it's very easy to have a bad result and then just to kind of think of yourself as kind of like worthless, and your self-worth very much tied up in the performance you gave on that day. Um, but I guess, having the perspective of that, I am a good athlete. I do have a lot of progression ahead of me. I have only been doing professional sport or professional triathlon a couple of seasons, really. And you speak to some athletes who have been doing the, pro triathlon for 10 plus years, and some of them took best part of the 6, 7, 8 years to kind of get to the level that they, thought they could be year one. So it's nice and reassuring to hear that. But also I guess the perks of having a family alongside doing pro sport means that you can't dwell too long on a race result because there's always other things in life to kind of shift focus. And you have a bad race one day, but you go and spend some time with your daughter, and the next day it's easy to pick yourself back up, I think.
Yeah, too right. Too right. I can attest to that. And mate, you're 30 years old. If you were a footballer, you would be coming to the end of a career. But triathlon is a sport. Like I said a minute ago, it doesn't feed its athletes easily, but the longevity is there. You could have, hopefully not. Hopefully you'll have your best race next year or the year after. But there is every chance that you may have the best raase of your career when you're 39.
Exactly. And I think
I'm
whilst I'm
still
enjoying
hoping
it,
that'll happen to me.
I'm hoping it'll be next year, definitely. No, but whilst you're enjoying it, I think as well, like, and this will probably be very relatable to anyone who does triathlon, age group or professional, is it's a lifestyle. It's not, yes, I'm trying to do it at like an elite level and trying to perform at like a high level and kind of earn money from it. But ultimately, it's a lifestyle I enjoy. It's a hobby I enjoy, and I take it bloody seriously, which, I pretty much everyone who does triathlon takes it seriously, I think.
Some too
Um,
seriously.
some too seriously. Um, but whilst I'm enjoying it, I don't see why, you don't just weather the storm. If you have those bad days, those bad races, I still enjoy getting out of bed and going and pushing myself daily. So whilst I've still got that hunger and I've still got that drive and I still enjoy what I do, you've just got to be patient and trust that results will come to you. Obviously, you've got to go out and get them, but don't. I think the dwelling on a bad day and thinking that is, as good as it's going to get is a very short-sighted way to look at sport, I think.
Good advice for life in general. Have you made any
Yeah.
changes going into 2025?
Yeah, no, definitely. I actually parted ways with my coach, David Tilby Davis, um, which was a hard conversation, and it's a conversation we actually had off the air. You and I chatted about it. Um, and David is, world renowned, one of the best coaches in the world.
He's a legend of mine.
Um, Absolute great coach and great person. And we had 2.5 years together. Um, and I really enjoyed working with him. Went through the process of, trying to tackle and improve on my Ironman. And I was getting to the point where, I'd see a glimmer and not quite get the result I needed, and kind of went through that cycle a few times. And we kind of parted on good terms, but we obviously got to the point where actually we both agreed that, if we did the same thing again and again and we were getting the same results, we're going to start going a bit insane, as coach and athlete.
Yeah.
And actually the healthy
A
way of
quote that's often misattributed to Einstein, I think, isn't
that's
it?
the one, yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think we both could see that there's untapped well, not untapped. We can see there's potential based on training that, there's a performance that's, potentially very good. And we haven't managed to successfully see that on the race course, I don't think, yet. Um, and I guess the only way to try and uncover that is by trying something different. So
Well,
that's
I'm
yeah,
coaching you now, aren't
that unfortunately not. Um,
I? Who are you
but
working
yeah,
with now?
so we're working with Sam Proctor.
Okay, how's that going?
Um, yeah, no, really good. Obviously, only a couple of weeks in. But working with Sam Proctor, he works alongside Mark Pierce, who used to work for British Triathlon, as like a physiologist and then a coach. So kind of work very closely with Sam, and then Sam obviously collaborates a lot with Mark. So it's kind of like having two coaches in one, which yeah, it's been really good so far. I can tell there's a different philosophy in terms of coaching, um, but also I can see, and that's what I think I needed in terms of just like mental and physical, of just like approaching the whole triathlon thing in a slightly different way. It's some bike and run, but there's a million ways to train for it. And I think I just needed to try something different. And yeah, obviously time will tell. And I'll be able to give you a better rundown of how it's worked in about 5 months' time, 4 months' time, 4 months' time in hopefully in South Africa.
Yeah, so you've got a bit of a race plan for next year sorted out. Is that something you want to share with the listeners, or are you keeping your cards close to your chest right now?
No, no, I'm quite open. So I'm planning on potentially trying to do the Pro Series. I watched it this year. I did a couple of the races, but I didn't really fully kind of meet the requirements for it in terms of the amount of events. So yeah, gonna do Ironman South Africa and Ironman Texas to start the year.
Double header,
Um,
man.
double headed to start, and you need three full distances and a couple of 70.3s to kind of be competitive. So yeah, hopefully bank two Ironmans nice and early and go from there. But it's I think South Africa as well as being in the Pro Series is massively a bucket list race. So that super excites me as well.
Beautiful race.
But yeah, it's obviously something that I think is quite an interesting topic, which is just like who is going to be doing what next year because there is these opportunities, isn't there? Like obviously, I'm gonna try and tackle the Pro Series if all goes to plan. Um, but there's obviously other athletes who have said they're not going to do the Pro Series or they're going to be doing T100 if they get a contract. And obviously one of our good friends, Joe Skipper's openly said,
Oh, mate, you should be a professional podcaster. That was a segue and a fucking half, wasn't it? Eh?
you didn't even see it
Jesus.
coming, did you?
No, I didn't see it coming. I had the whole spiel lined up to talk about something else, but you've pushed this. But before we get into what Joe Skipper's doing, which we will talk about next, because my co-host has nicely segued into it. If you are enjoying this podcast that we do on a weekly basis, you can join up and join the show at patreon.com/talking triathlon. It's you guys that keep us going and help fund what we do. If you want to follow Tim, he's in T14 on Instagram, and I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram. And if you do join the Patreon group, we'll put you in the social group, put you in the Facebook group, and we'll put you in the WhatsApp group that everyone is always referencing. But yes, let's have a chat about Joe Skipper. He is saying on his podcast that Nice is his big goal for 2025. And he's decided that the Pro Series is not what he looks to be doing. He said he's not going for the Pro Series. He said, for me, the way the racing pans out doesn't work well for me. I'd rather target individual races and try to win them. I want to do South Africa because it's a good race. The timing of the year is good, and I want to try and win it. But I'm not going to pursue Ironman Pro Series as it's too much traveling. Well, he ain't going to win South Africa, is he? Because you're going to go and fucking win that
Hey,
one.
yeah, exactly. It's
There you
way too
go.
much competition for him.
There you go. And then I think, yeah, Nice is going to be his big goal. We'll get on to Nice in a minute after we've
Yeah,
talked about this. But what do you think of his decision? Do you think it's a sensible way of approaching the year from him?
I truly think it is. And me and Joe actually chatted about it, and I think last year he found it difficult because he had, I guess, invested a lot of time and effort and money, etc., into trying to chase the series, and he got ill in Texas, same race I got ill.
Yeah.
And that basically just derailed his whole year, I think, in terms of just the ability to do the series properly. So, and anyone who knows Joe Skipper knows that he is, a specialist at the distance, and I think being in the series that maybe pigeonholes him a little bit into like having to do specific races. But there's some incredible Ironman races out there that, I'm pretty sure he's starting his year in New Zealand, which he's won that race before. Um, and I think it's not necessarily that he's looking for easier races because I don't think there's such a thing as an easy race in Ironman racing anymore.
No, of course not.
But I think he wants to do the events that excite him, and exactly as he said, like races that he wants to go to, and when he starts a race, he wants to win. I think that's Skipper all over. So, um, I think it's a sensible decision. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, like you say, it's less of a pigeonholing and more of a prescription, isn't it? If you're
Mm,
chasing the series, it prescribes that you race a certain amount each year. You have to, in order to be successful in that series, you have to rack up an amount of races, an amount of Ironmans, an amount of 70.3s, and then you probably have to do the World Championships as well. And I think you're going to see a dividing line between those athletes who are chasing the series points seriously and those athletes that are chasing that world championship result seriously. Because I'm not sure it's possible to do both.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it'd be
Uh,
interesting to
and
see.
Joe's a big, sorry to interrupt, but Joe's a big game player, man. You know,
Yeah,
I see him less as someone who spreads himself across a year. I see him turning up and hitting certain events really hard and hitting it with a performance. And Nice is a race that he could do really well in.
and actually, like, I think sometimes I think he's better off when he doesn't race any middle distance as well, and he literally just sticks to the fulls. And if he picks, he might even race 4 or 5 full distances next year because that's the type of guy he is. But as you said, he's a big day racer. He'll pick the ones he wants to do and he'll go and hit them. Um, yeah, no, I completely agree with you.
He said, "My goal is to compete at Ironman World Championships in Nice. I watched Kona and really motivated me, and I thought, what would I need to do to get a good result in Nice? And had a big think about it, and I think I can do that. Get a really good result in Nice. I've had a long think about what I had to do to get a top five, top three, and potentially win it. I don't think that's out of reach. If I train for it and hit my big targets in my head, I think I need to. Do you think an athlete like Joe Skipper can win a race like Nice?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Friendships aside, motherfucker.
That's a hard. I think
Because just for the
I.
reference, I think yes,
You think
absolutely,
yes? Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
I think that if Joe had when I raced Joe actually in Ironman Wales 2022, and he ran a 2:37 up and down the hills in Tembe. And if anyone's been to Tembe, it is
It's flat as a
ridic
pancake, isn't it?
ridiculously hard. Like it's ridiculously hard. And he had the fastest run split on the day by not just like 5 minutes or something. I think he outran everyone by like 18 minutes. Was the next quickest runner.
It was a
Um,
huge run split.
if he can run to that form in Nice on a flat course and run in the low 230s, and if he can shave his deficit, which I think last Nice was like 6 minutes, if he can shave that by a half and get himself 3 minutes off the back, we know he can ride a bike. I can see him finishing in that 3 to 5 range because I think he's finished fifth at Kona before. I think he can finish potentially on the podium. I'm just not sure if he's got that little bit he needs to win. And I think it's maybe slightly biased coming from me because I think in my head to win, you've got to be in the front swim pack. And maybe that's just a bias because that's the way I look at the sport. But I think him not be, ever being not, I don't see him ever being in that front swim pack. Sorry, Joe. So therefore, I don't. Always see him on the back foot.
Was Patrick Lang in the front swim pack in Kona?
He was fourth out the water.
No, he was, wasn't he? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I was about to derail your point then, but clearly not. Yeah. I mean that point is very arguable and defensible. Absolutely. And you know, it makes sense. It's difficult to argue with it. I just think if there's a race an athlete like Joe is going to win, it's going to be more Nice than Kona.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
100% because that muscular bike course that he can get himself over and get time on, make time up on the ascents and then on the descent on ascents and then make put time into people on the descent and
Well,
then
you saw
cling
you
on for
saw
dear
it
life
you
on the
saw
road.
it with the last time around with the men. People who did really well were Ditlev, Laidlow. These guys aren't small guys; they're big guys.
Mm.
They're big guys. They push a lot of power, and I think initially when we saw that Nice was going to be an Ironman World Championship, we did instantly think, all the super light climbing guys are going to be the guys who are at the forefront of the race. And
Did
yeah,
we?
you had
You might have done.
well, I think a lot of people did. I think a
Yeah, all
lot of
right.
people did. And I think they counted out a lot of people because, you know, it's difficult to get 80 kilos to the top of a hill fast. But then
I can
what the
attest to that.
what these guys what these guys have got is hell like a lot of power, a lot of power. And I think once you're moving at 30 plus K an hour, power's good.
Power to
Power's
weight.
good, and well, but I don't think the weight aspect comes into it as much. I think you're just moving quick enough. The power and the speed are just almost more important than the power to weight.
I think science might argue with that a little bit, but
Maybe, maybe.
physics might have something to say. Weight
Hey,
doesn't
I
matter if you're going fast enough. Give them
my
a
my A level
motor,
my A
maybe.
level physics knowledge might be a little bit lacking, but we'll see.
One thing that might get in the way of Joe winning Nice, though, is the scoop that you gave me just before we press record, and that is that Nice isn't going to exist next year, according to Andrew Horstfall-Turner. So fill us in, mate.
Is that breaking news? Is that
Breaking news. Heard it here first.
um it's just been, and I'd say when we say news, I think it's very much we're chatting about rumors, and I think
Yeah,
we
there's a
need to
rumble,
make
isn't
sure.
there?
Yeah, there's rumbles in the triathlon sphere. Those that follow Jack Kelly or the Triathlon Hour would have seen him posting pictures about people saying that their entries have gone funny on the active website, and also that Ironman not showing Nice on their website anymore. And but I've heard from multiple sources that there's the potential that we move to a 1 day race again in Kona. Um, and I've also heard that that potential is next year. And but we're scheduled or we're contracted into one more year of Nice for men. Um, but I'm not sure if Ironman have just bitten the bullet and bought themselves out of that deal and said, "Screw it, let's go to Kona."
I mean, if
Um,
if that change is going to be made, we don't tend to talk about age groupers very much on the podcast. We're focused on professionals.
yeah,
But if that change is going to be made, they need to pull that pin out very quickly because a lot of
quickly,
people are going
yeah.
to start making travel plans, if not already have started making travel plans, booking Airbnbs, booking flights. And if they don't tell people, I would say this side of Christmas, they are going to have a shitstorm on their hands.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with that. If that is the actual decision they've made, and we can talk about whether we think it's a good decision in a minute, but if that's the decision they've made, they need to inform people ASAP because, as you said, the men are planning to go to Nice next year, and if their entry is now going to be moved to the Big Island in Hawaii, that's a very different race to plan for and logistically travel to for a lot of Europeans.
Definitely.
And
And
a lot of
it
Europeans
affects
probably
your
won't
year running
they won't
in, I'm
even go.
sure. It affects your race choices. It affects your entire calendar where that
Oh
world
yeah.
championship is going to be.
So that aside, what's your thoughts on that? It moving back to Kona.
Look, I mean, I think anyone who's been listening to me and Tim over the last few weeks, ever since Kona, we've almost done an about face on how important we feel that race is. Because my opinion for a long time has always been lock Kona in maybe every 5 years and then rotate around it. Maybe not make it the world championships and make the world championships elsewhere, but have Kona as a race. All these ideas I've had. But then we watched that Kona and how spectacular it was and how it had such gravity to it, gravitas to it, that I feel like returning to Kona for a 1 day race might be the answer. And as much as I enjoyed being at the start of at the exit of T2 in Nice and watching the two lead women go out onto a completely empty race course and having that moment, I really enjoyed that. I think I miss the male and female pros racing together. I miss
Yeah.
that buzz. Um, and you've got to not be afraid of changing your mind on these things. Otherwise, we all just belligerently head in the same direction all the time. You got to be able to look at something and think, what do I prefer? And I think I would prefer them. But what I'd quite like them to do is scale back their endeavor a little bit for that day. Maybe reduce the amount of age groupers they've got racing. Make it a pro event with a maybe the amount of age groupers from 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I don't know. Just scale it back. Stop trying to grow it constantly so it's just
Yeah.
bursting at the seams.
And that's what I think. I completely agree with both those points. I the only issue I have is that by making it a 1 day race in Kona, there is that kind of issue with, how do we give the females their own clear race because
Yeah,
there always
absolutely.
is like disruption with male with age group men. or even pro men who are having a seriously bad day.
Yeah,
But
totally. Absolutely. And
there's that kind of that's that issue, and I think there's multiple ways you can look at it. And if, as you said, if you shrink the field size, if you stagger the starts even more, you can potentially get around that. If I raced Almere this year, and they did something really weird, which they let the female athletes go off first,
yeah, I saw that.
and they set the men off. I think it was like 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes behind. Um, but you could even try and do something where, you're basically trying to predict when the male and female finisher are going to cross the line almost at the same time, and kind of almost have like a head to head of the genders, which would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, but
Um,
then you do get an interference where you've got
yeah,
chains of
men coming through the
men
female
coming
race.
through,
Yeah, yeah, that is true.
and you've got pace lines and things. I think from a race logistics perspective, 2 days is brilliant.
But I
I
think,
think
yeah,
from a cost and locals not being happy perspective, 2 days is not brilliant. I think from a vibes perspective, everybody racing on the same day, gives me those vibes that I like. It's
it gets people excited, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Definitely
yeah,
gets
and
people excited.
there are so many aspects to this to consider and think about, and there isn't just one black and white answer that fits everybody. You've got to consider all of these things before you make a decision. And get the feeling from the rumblings that I've heard is that those things are being considered and a decision will be made. I just hope they don't just make a rash decision and land themselves in a position where they're like, we go back to a day where everybody's getting in everybody's way and it's bursting
Yeah,
full of at the seams and
I
it
guess the
doesn't fit.
the exciting thing for me would be, and I being an age grouper turned pro, and also knowing a lot of age group athletes who participate in the sport, I really miss the days when qualifying for the World Championship was this kind of like pinnacle, and it was like, I had people I know who had been to four, five, six different Ironman races over the space of a couple of years because they're desperately trying to qualify and trying to get this spot for the World Championship. And you know, they miss it by 30 seconds one weekend. So they're going to race another Ironman in 6 weeks to try and get it. That kind of excitement on and striving to be at the very best. And if you get that slot, you deserve to be there. 100, 1000% deserve to be there. What I think sometimes, what has definitely happened since COVID and since the split is there has been situations where the slots have rolled down so far because logistically of where they are, and specific age groups have had way too many slots for people who actually want to take them up, and it turns into a, okay, great, is anyone here 50 to 55, do you want to go? And I think that then devalues what a world championship should be in my eyes.
Yeah,
So
and
I
that's
agree. Shrink it down to, I think, 1800. I think they expanded up to about 2300, 2400, and then the pros on top of that. But shrink it back down to 1800. You
yeah.
know, there will always be a slight male percentage more than female, because ultimately that's just how many men participate in the sport
Yeah,
compared to female
until
athletes.
we can get that balance
Yeah,
right,
but
it's
you should have a similar level of competition in both the male and female races. That's what fair
yeah,
racing is all about. And you want everyone who's at the World Championship to be the same level of great athletes at the World Championships, in my eyes.
totally. I think there's two perspectives, isn't there? Nice has been fairly empty on the age grouper front, both for the women and the men's races. Um, but there's also the aspect of, are they just reacting too soon? You know, because but then it's a participation led sport and everybody's in it for Kona for some reason. It's a pickle. All these age groupers are desperate to get to Kona because Kona
Yeah.
has a word I can't say. Ura,
Or
Ura,
yeah, or
Ura, yeah, to it, and it has that what we call history in this sport. 1979 to now.
well, I'm currently a professional triathlete, and I'm currently a professional triathlete because Kona got me into triathlon. So
There you go.
that says it all. And I think you'll find thousands of people out there with the exact same story, which
Yeah, yeah.
is Kona. Kona brought me in.
Yeah.
So
And so, the idea of racing there probably trumps all else for a lot of people. But I agree with you. Reduce that field size, bring it right down, make it a race where there is space to have a race. Make it so that drafting doesn't isn't the isn't forced upon people on the roads, and make it so that the women aren't getting interfered with by age group men. Spread it out and make it and for those that get there, make it an A class experience.
yeah, no, completely agree. Completely agree.
Now, if at the start of this podcast, we started talking about age and, your best race maybe when you were 39. And I was going to
Yeah.
segue into something else, but you beat me to the gold standard segue. And I was going to have a chat about Cam Worth, who is
Okay.
41
Yeah.
years old and claimed seventh place in the world in Kona. And then he went and raced the New York Marathon in 2:36:22. And now he's off to Ironman Cozumel on Sunday, the 24th of November. Will this man ever slow down, do you think?
Uh, yeah, I have no idea is the real answer because um how old did you say he was? I think he's
He's
over 40, isn't
41.
he?
Yeah, he's
41.
41.
Oh my God. I I don't even know if I'd be still running at that age. My knees will probably give out or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I am right in the middle of feeling a little bit of knee pain as I sit here. I keep having to stretch my leg out. He's He said, I've been asked a lot lately as an older athlete, do I find my recovery isn't the same as it used to be? My answer, no. If anything, I believe I can train at a higher level and recover better than I did when I was a younger athlete. I feel this is quite fortunate as I really have no choice. The current generation is getting so fast that I have to lift my game if I want to remain competitive at the highest level. The truth, however, is, while I believe this to be the case, the fact people ask me the question so often makes me doubt myself. Am I just convincing myself that I'm still able to handle the workload I need to be able to handle? Well, running the New York Marathon 1 week after Kona was a test for myself to prove to myself how my body's holding up. How did it feel in New York? I felt like I was flying. Still a bit left under the hood yet.
Fair
Legend,
play.
mate.
But yeah, and I love that because and we've spoken to that off the air multiple times about like how, where do you see like your triathlon journey going? How long do you see yourself doing it? Yada yada. And like I if my body's holding up and I'm able to still race, to a very high level that Cam is when I'm 41, hell yeah, I'd still be doing it because,
Yeah.
who wouldn't? Sport is probably the best thing, slightly biased opinion, but sport is probably one of the best things in life. Just for, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, but
Mental health.
mental
Yeah.
psychology, it's so massive and it also allows you to travel the world and Cam's obviously in a fortunate position where he's part of a pro cycling team.
He's got a
He's,
big
probably
Ineos checkbook, mate. Pay him
he
for his
doesn't he
travel.
doesn't want for much. Yeah, he doesn't want
No.
for much, just put it that way. So hey, if he can keep doing it till he's 45, 46, then have at it, keep going. Why not?
He was my MVP of Kona. I think the way he raced his day was spectacular. And finishing seventh place, chipping away through that run, not being, not pushing himself out of his comfort zone and into the red zone and therefore blowing up like a lot of athletes did. I just feel like he paced it so well.
It was interesting watching it was interesting watching him run through the field and running past a lot of people I would consider much better runners than him.
Yeah.
But because I think the nature of how hard the bike has become, and that being his, his bread and butter, his background, he hasn't got that, that dynamite right off the front bike course record bike that he used to have. But I think he's still doing the same level of bike, but he's not as screwed after it than everyone
Yeah,
else is.
it's
Everyone else is up their bike game, but they're just absolutely screwing themselves.
it's kind of like you just sitting off the back of the front pack in the swim.
Yeah, just chilling and being
Just
like, I'm
chilling,
I'm
yeah.
wasting no energy here. Whereas, because he outran people, running is not his strength, but he was outrunning a lot of great
Mhm.
runners, which is credit to him and I guess we could say based on his age, the maturity of his racing mind.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Legend. He's one of my favorite people in the sport.
So
And
he's actually racing. I think he's racing another Ironman in a couple of weeks, isn't he? At
yeah,
Cozumel.
Cozumel on the 24th of November.
Have you seen who he's got? Who he's got competition in
I have
there?
not looked at that start list yet, but
You've
furnish me.
got you've got a someone you wouldn't expect to see in an Ironman,
Is it me?
Mr. Martin Van Riel.
Martin Van Riel. There you go. Is that his first Ironman?
I think that's a Ironman debut. Yeah,
Oh, motherfucker. He'll do all right, won't he?
hey, he's not bad at this swim bike thing,
He's
swim
not
bike run
he's
thing.
not bad at this at all. No, he is also, to echo what I just said, one of my favorite people in the sport. He's a very, very friendly guy.
But yeah, so that would be quite an interesting one. And if well, we obviously don't know if it's Kona or Nice now next year. It probably still Nice, but we'll say maybe Kona. This is obviously one of the first big chances for a lot of men to, well, and ladies to get their slot for next year's.
Purely on a very selfish level, I hope that Nice continues because it's very easy for me to get there. And I do like going and hanging around the World Championships and watching that race unfold.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%.
So, talking about people racing things, let's talk about people not racing things. Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Iden have announced they are not racing the 70.3 World Championships in New Zealand. Um, do you think this is a good idea? The boys.
I guess we have to take each one in.
Yeah, a silo, isn't it? It's a silo.
Yeah,
They don't come as a pair.
you used to like when they broke into the long course side of things, you would just refer to them as like the same person almost because you just knew they were going to be at the front of the race. I think for Gustav, it's very sensible. I think he's probably progressed quite a lot this year in terms of just like basically starting again from zero.
Yeah.
Um, so I think for him to, not have a good day at Kona, but go right, let's rest up, let's think about next season and just kind of get his head right, get his body right. I think that's completely the right decision. Um, I'm I think it's the right decision for Christian. But I'd say I'm more surprised about Christian because Christian loves to race
He's
and
a fiend for it, isn't he? That's the thing. I mean, like you
yeah,
say,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I echo what you say. I think when it comes to Gustav, good shout. You've dipped your toe back into the sport. You've had a bit of a tough time, but you've come back in. You've raced some races. You've got some results on the board. I would rest up now in the off season. Well, rest up. He'll be training his bollocks off. But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would
Building back
build
up for
back
next year.
up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
better, isn't it? I'd be building back up in the off season, not stressing yourself out too much. New Zealand's a long way to go. Just tuck that one away. Come back to fight another day.
Mm.
That's my opinion on Gustav. Christian, mate, I'm so surprised. He's a fiend for it. I'm surprised he's not already there. You know, carving himself some greenstone out of the rocks they got over there and growing another beard in the wilderness, ready to take on the world.
Uh, do you, it's a difficult one to kind of like think about, but do you think with his Olympics and then also Kona not going to plan, obviously if you asked him, 6 months ago what his plan was for the year, he was like, win the Olympics, win Kona. Do you think because that plan, you know, didn't go as he intended, how do you think that's affected him and do you think that's affected the decision he's made?
Oh, it's difficult to put thoughts into people's minds, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think a man like Christian Blumenfeld is very mentally resilient.
Yeah.
And I think when you've achieved what he's achieved in the sport, he's already a legend. He's already one of the best triathletes in the world, if not arguably, you know, arguably the best on the male side. Um, and so I would hope, and I know he listens sometimes because he's often messaging away if we say something that he doesn't agree with. I would hope that it hasn't affected him too negatively. But you've also got to weigh that against these are top level professional athletes who are wired very differently to people like me. Not differently to people like you, but very differently to someone like me. And so you never know that it might have derailed him slightly, but I hope not because what he's already achieved in the sport is will go down in history, and he has got many, 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 more years ahead of him to achieve much more, which he will do, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's still a young guy as well. Like when we talk about Cam
Yeah, was he
being
like
or he
12 or
plays
something?
I don't know.
Stick on beard.
He's got a receding hairline, so
Yeah, well, yeah. I've had one.
um,
I went bald when I was 22, mate. That doesn't mean a thing.
but no, I completely agree. And actually, if I'm thinking of like a tactical decision, he's won the world championships before. He's won the 70.3 world championships. He's won the Olympics. The only thing missing in that kind of trophy cabinet is Kona. Um, and I
Like, never
think
won the WTCS World Championships, has he?
that would definitely get him to message you.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, so from that standpoint, I think what's the point of going all the way to New Zealand because ultimately all he really wants now is Kona. So again, rebuild, build up, whatever you want to
yeah.
say.
How does an athlete like Christian Blumenfeld crack Kona? Do you think that he's got the same problem that someone like Chris McCormack, for example, had back in the day? Absolute ability, winning everything, but Kona was defeating him for years. Do you think we're going to see that kind of code be cracked by him at some point?
So I think there was probably multiple things wrong with him in Kona that he probably didn't make that public because obviously the way in which we all saw his
The
nutrition
world
come
came
back
out of
up.
him. Yeah.
Um, so I think maybe there was something not quite right, nutritionally, maybe pre-event. You never know. There's so many things that can happen in race week. Maybe it was an illness, you never know. But also the way that the tactics of the race went, the way Laidlow was off the front and then Magnus tried to bridge, and obviously we saw how Laidlow's ride ended up with him in terms of just, cooking his race as well. I think maybe that aggressive nature of that race completely derailed Christian's race as well. And it kind of, Christian was a fatality of Laidlow and Magnus's biking.
Do you think,
Um,
but counter to that, mate, do you think Laidlow's and Magnus's biking was a response to how much of a buffer they think they needed on the run
yeah,
to
100%.
someone like Christian? So do you think
Everyone,
everybody was getting
everyone's
into each
scared of
other's heads?
everyone. Yeah, 100%. And I think for Christian, if I'm honest, Christian's got to do hopefully maybe be a bit ahead, but he's got to do a Patrick Lang. He's got to be near the front after the bike, and then he's just got to drop 235. That's the way he wins. And I can see that happening. Well, I could have seen it happening this year, and obviously didn't happen. But you know, he didn't spend enough time on a TT bike, I don't think, and he probably would admit that. Give this guy a proper 12-month build up into a Kona. Yeah, it's gonna happen, I think.
Yeah. No one was beating Lang this year. The way he
No.
ran. Like,
And if you had a fresh Christian come off the bike and all still have his nutrition in his stomach, maybe you had a good run race, but it wasn't to be this year.
would have been cool though, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So what else is happening, mate? We've got the T100 World Tour um final in Dubai this weekend. But before we get to that, they are increasing the World Tour next year to 8 races, with Vancouver being rumored as that additional race. What are your thoughts on the
nice.
T100 Tour so far?
Um, I think I've got quite like a mixed opinion because I think I see so much good in it and so many positives. But then also I guess being a diehard Tri fan as well, like you know, it's easy to be critical as well. And I think I'm kind of maybe tiptoeing the line of, being complimentary and also being a bit too critical at the same time as well. I think from a pure racing standpoint, I love to be able to turn the TV on and watch, say, Taylor Nibb, Ashley Gentle, etc., just like going at it. That is exciting, and I like how the T100 is facilitating that, multiple times a year, not just once a year at a world championship. So from that standpoint, I'm loving it. Um, I'm not sure I fully have been able to buy into the season long narrative that they obviously want to try and create. But I think a big issue with that is around contracted athletes. And then, I think I saw a statistic online earlier that only 11 out of the 20 athletes in the female side of the race are gonna fulfill their Can you say that word?
Contractual
Contract.
obligations, mate.
That's the word. That's the word. Um, so from that standpoint, you can understand why it's difficult to fully buy into that season-long narrative if there's athletes not turning up. Um, but hey, yeah, I think ultimately I like the fact that there's commitment that it's going to go again next year. I know I've heard rumblings that, they've got long-term commitment financially as well. I don't think they see this being like a flash in the pan. I think they see it being, you know, a developing series. And although there's maybe some teething issues currently, I do like what they're doing, and I do want to see it succeed. But I definitely want to see as a triathlon fan, I want to see a big step up next year in a kind of like in a bit of a mean way.
Yeah. No, yeah, I tend to echo those comments. I think I love their branding. I love the way they portray themselves. I think their mission is a brilliant one. What they've achieved so far is great. I think their broadcast is probably one of the best in triathlon, maybe rivaled by Super League. But Super Tri, sorry, but it's a different style of racing, so they're never really going to be in competition with each other. Um, their broadcast and their commentary team are so much better than Ironman's that it's night and day. So yeah, but this year what we had Miami, Singapore, Alcatraz, London, Ibiza, Las Vegas, and Dubai. Where Vancouver would sit within that, I'm not quite sure. It would probably be, seasonal. Um, but yeah, 8 races next year rather than 7 is good news. I'm here for that, and I like you. I think it's gone well enough that I'm very pleased to hear that they've got commitment for another season
Mm.
publicly, and privately we're hearing there's commitment for a lot more than that. So that's good news for me. I think like you say, anytime I get the opportunity to turn on the TV or the laptop or whatever and watch some of the best triathletes in the world racing their hearts out, the more the merrier, really.
But also, I think what's happened already this year, which is super good to see, is they have started to roll out the venues and dates a little bit earlier because I think if I might be wrong on this, but I think we were still like February this year and we were still unsure what the season looked like.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, before Christmas, we know exactly what we've got coming up next year in terms of T100, and then potentially once some of those venues become an annual thing and happen every year because there will be some changing. There'll be some events that stop and some events that start. Once we start to hit an annual calendar that we see year in year out, that's when I think I guess how solid and how stable the T100 becomes. That and then also we could probably do an hour and a half podcast, maybe even 2 hours on how we think they should contract athletes to race. But yeah, I don't think it's quite right yet, and I think they know that as well.
Yeah, and I really do get the impression they know that. We haven't officially heard that from anybody, so don't take this as too formal, but I get the impression they know that well, and
Mm.
that if you, of course, any organization worth their salt is going to want to have their performers that are the talent captive for that series and not have people wandering off and not racing for reasons that aren't just I've injured myself. You want to have the best of the best racing week in, week out, whenever those races pop up. And I think that is obviously what they're building towards, but it's a chicken and egg. They need a proof of concept in order to get investment. They need investment to get the proof of concept. They must be juggling so many balls, and it must be
I
tough.
I think rightly so, and it is a good thing. I think we all have a high expectation, and I think a high expectation does mean in some situations we do feel let down, but it also means that we know we've got a good product and that everyone is trying to strive for that. And I think especially the people in the triathlon world know how great triathlon is as a sport. And we're trying to navigate like getting that out to people who don't necessarily fully understand the sport or haven't really watched it before. and we know how great it is, so we're going to be super critical on it. Um, but yeah, watch this space. I think hopefully in hopefully when I retire in 10 years time, the
Having won
sport isn't
everything.
having won everything,
Yeah.
T100 series a couple of times, but yeah, hopefully we're in a completely different space. And I would love to see it become that series, They always compare it to like F1 or tennis or whatever it is, but I would love the T100 series to be, an iconic sporting series that you speak to someone at the pub and they tune in and they have never done a triathlon, but they're just a fan of sport and just like to watch, exciting racing. And I think, hey, one day maybe.
Yes. Do you have the start list for this weekend there?
I do. I
Do
do.
you want to read me off some names? Because I always end up getting stitched up with this and I mispronounce things and then I get shit for it. So I'm gonna land it to you this
We're
week.
starting with the females or the
Let's
men's.
start with the women's start list.
Okay, so we've got Taylor Knibb, Ashley Gentle, India Lee, Imogen Simmons, Laura Phillip, Kat Matthews, Lucy Barham, Paula Finley, Julie Doran, either way. Flora Duffy, Taylor Spivey, Tamara Jewett, Anne Haag. Don't know how to say this one. Kada Cavgio,
That's the one that
yeah,
made me hospital pass it
Cav.
to you, to be honest.
Laura Madsen, Kate Curran, Marjolaine Pierre, Marlon de Boer, Diedrichs. That's a hard one.
It is.
And Perez Sarah at the end. So there's some names again, some names we've seen throughout the whole series, and there is a couple of wild card entries into this race that we haven't seen a lot of in the T100 series. So um,
Taylor Knibb for the win, no?
tailing it for the win. I guess before we even go into how the race looks, I guess we're missing a big key athlete that's not on the start list, which is Lucy Charles-Barclay.
Yes, Lucy Charles-Barclay isn't racing, which is a
St
shame.
yeah,
Do you think that's a continuation of the injury that saw her not race Nice?
I've seen on just through social media that she's back running and she's healthy. Um, but I
Maybe just
think
being
maybe
precautionary.
just not, maybe just not at a fitness level where she feels like she can race these girls,
Women.
um, women. Um, but hey, I think it's difficult, especially because she had obviously big ambitions at the beginning of the year, being the T100 series. She then kind of pivoted and was like, actually, I want to race Nice. And then it kind of almost seems like it came crashing down a little bit for her, which is a shame because obviously world champion last season. So um, I think if anything, I think people will specialize a lot more next year because if this year's shown anything, doing a lot of racing is difficult. And if you want to commit to the T100 series, I think you need to be fit and healthy for 8 races, and doing too much outside of that becomes very taxing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we saw her. What did she pulled out of London T100, didn't she?
Mm.
With an injury mid-race. She didn't race in Nice because of a niggle, and now she's not racing this. Is it Achilles or calf? Do you know?
I think calf related. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, calf injuries are annoying. I've had Achilles in the past, and they are not an easy injury to shake off. And she does seem to have a susceptibility in that area.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So going back to the start list we have then. So who do you see? Should we just go straight to a podium and just pick our podium and talk about those, or
Yeah,
how do you
man,
want
let's
to
do
do
it.
it?
Let's do it. I mean, for me, Taylor Knibb is clear favorite for the win, just because of what she can do to a field on that bike. She's a very good swimmer. She's up there in the lead pack in the swim. She gets on the bike and she just decimates people. And then she's more than a good enough runner for that buffer that she's built on the bike to not be eaten into by anybody, even the likes of Ashley Gentle or Anne Haug. I don't see. What do you think,
Mm.
mate?
Yeah, I think I can't disagree with that in terms of
It's
if
bad
we were just
podcasting. You should be like, no,
I just
Kadi
think
Kivjoda's gonna win.
I just don't the only Achilles heel I see of Taylor is there's a slight technical element to this race in Dubai, and she's not the best technical rider. And if that means that normally she has a 4 to 5 minute lead going onto the run, and that's reduced to only, say, 2.5 minutes, I think it then does open up for, a Julie Duran or Ashley Gentle or someone along those lines who then I still feel like is still feel like it's a long shot for them to be able to catch,
Hmm.
but I feel like it puts them back more in contention. And we could be completely wrong on race day, and the gap could be 7 minutes, and she actually nails these corners, but and U-turns. But if Taylor has an Achilles heel, it is the technical aspect of biking.
Agreed. Agreed. Absolutely. Um, but yeah, no, I stand by what I said.
So
She's
yeah, I'm picking her for my win anyway. I don't
she's
know.
she's, she's gonna take the field apart. How do you see the race shaking out though, with a field like this and a course like that?
I think we're gonna have. I think it's gonna be quite split up. To be honest, I think you'll have small groups of like 3 or 4 athletes, but I don't think you're gonna have, say, like a big group of 7 to 10 athletes all riding together. Um, the I guess on the swim out the front, you're obviously gonna have Taylor. You're gonna have Taylor Spivey as well. You're gonna have who else we've got? Who's a great swimmer? You've also got Flora Duffy. So there's going to be a decent little swim group coming out the front. Um, what I'm excited to see, being a Brit, and obviously you're the same, I'm excited to see how well people like Lucy Byram and Indy Lee can sort of tear up the bike, because they've shown consistently throughout this year and also last how strong they're both on the bike.
Yeah.
And also you put Kat Matthews in that same bracket. I know I saw on social media she'd been a bit ill, but um, you wouldn't count her out either. So I'm excited to see how the British girls kind of move through the field on the bike. Um, and then yeah, you're then obviously then looking to the runners and where they position, how far behind are they? Do they stay in contention? Um, I think if Ashley needs to win, she needs to be within 2.5 minutes of Taylor off the bike.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I potentially see Taylor off the front. I then see maybe India and Lucy Byram coming into transition behind.
Yeah.
Maybe they can keep that 2.5 minute gap. But then I see someone like Ash maybe being more like 4+ minutes.
Maybe with
Um,
someone like Anne as well, possibly.
and potentially in that group as well. So, and I guess when we're talking about bike power as well, you can't count Paula Finley out either. So she could be. I think she's been super consistent. She hasn't had like a big winner at one of these races, but she's been there or thereabouts in all of them. So you wouldn't. She's going to be right in the mix, getting off the bike, especially.
So give me a podium then.
So Taylor for the win. Um,
Nearby, assume, not Spivey.
yeah, Taylor Nib, and then it's a hard one now. I'm gonna go Ashley Gentle, and then I'm gonna go Lucy Byram in third.
Interesting. I thought you were going to pick my exact podium then, but you didn't.
Okay, good, good.
Good work.
And the caveat is that I think Julie Deron is probably going to finish fourth, but she
Okay.
has a very big potential to end up on that podium.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to pick Taylor Knibb for the win. I'm going to put Ashley Gentle in second, and then I see Anne Howe running herself up to the podium in third.
Nice. She's got some. I guess she's had some unfortunate events recently with tires and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
her having a clean race, and she probably wants a bit of redemption as well. So when you're racing with a bit of with anger in the stomach, you never know.
Yeah, and I think she's due a good race. Um, I think her tire exploded in Nice, didn't it? Just properly exploded.
It was, yeah, sidewall blowout, like what, a couple of 100 meters into the bike or something
Yeah, it's
ridiculous
no
like
fun,
that.
that is it? It's no fun. That's
Not when
no
you're
fun.
not when you're one of the big favorites for the race,
Yeah, yeah.
especially.
Yeah,
So
totally. So, men's start list. Shall I read this one out? Save you the
yeah,
trouble.
you go for it.
Aaron Royal, Alistair Brownlee, Ben Canute, Bradley Weiss, Clement Mignon, Filet Mignon, David McNamee, Frederick Funk, Jason West, Justice Neuschlag, Kyle Smith, Leon Chevalier, Magnus Ditlev, Martin Van Riel, Matthias Magier, Max Newman, Peter Heimerich, Rico Bogan, Rudy von Berg, Sam Long, and Yuri Kulin. How do you see this side of the race shaking up?
See this, I see the
Harder,
men,
isn't it? This, in
I
my
see the
opinion.
men, yeah, I see the men racing very differently because I think we tend to see a much bigger front swim group with the men.
Hmm.
Um, because there's, if you run through the men, Martin Van Riel could make front swim group, well, definitely will. Carl Smith can make front swim group. Yuri on a good day can make that group. Matthias can make that group. Rico will make that group. Alistair could.
Bogan.
Yeah, Frederick Funk can make that group. Aaron Roll will be there definitely. Justice Nishlak will definitely be there. So already you got like, I reckon, guaranteed a front swim group of at least six. And potentially if it stays together a little bit more, your people like Ben Canute will probably be near there or thereabouts. Max Newman will be there or thereabouts. So I can see a big group coming out. I think then what we then are always looking for is how far is a Magnus Ditlev back? Is he, 30 seconds or is it more like a minute and a half? And then always is the next question is how far is Sam Long back?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, very
because
far. All the
very far.
fars.
Yeah, yeah, very
All of
far.
them.
Because and it's really weird because if we see him come out of the water, say 2.5, 3 minutes back, which in my eyes is like very far back.
Game over, man.
That's exciting, but no, but to me, 2.5 minutes is exciting because I
Yeah,
feel
no,
like,
that's what I mean. I mean, for most people, you'd be like,
yeah,
game over.
but for
But
Sam,
then,
you're like, yeah, you see, like, say you see like 3.5, 4 minutes, you're then thinking, oh, Sam, you're not going to be able to do that. But when you're thinking, if you see 2.5 minute gap or something like that, you're like, Sam's the type of beast who can turn a bad situation into a good one very easily.
he's diabolical, isn't he? The way he goes about it. I love it.
But yeah, I think the issue that he's having, and I think he will potentially have more in the coming years, is that the front swimmers are also becoming very, very good cyclists.
Yeah.
I think in the past you used to have a handful of really good swimmers who were also, say half decent runners and maybe lacked a little bit on the bike. Um, but you've now got some absolute animals on the bike. And the issue that, even though they're 20 meters spaced apart using Race Ranger and you know, legally riding safely, um, they are still working as a group. And the potential is if you have a good working group, even at 20 meters apart, they will be potentially moving fast or saving energy or however you want to like categorize that.
Yeah.
So I think the men's race is very much dictated by how well they organize themselves in that big group and with the technical element of a lot of U-turns and stuff like that, how the T100 police drafting and the
Which they suddenly
lights,
seem to have started doing.
which they started doing. But if they're going to say, oh, the U-turns, there's no drafting penalties, etc., etc., you're going to see a lot of like bunching and accelerating out of corners, which means that they don't slow down as much. But if they had to maintain their 20-meter gap through a U-turn, that will slow the front pack down massively because people
Yeah.
will have to brake a lot heavier to make sure the lights in front don't flash. So yeah, I think the dynamic of that, and we'll see that a lot more come this weekend about how they actually police it.
What about Leon Chevalier? He's got nice
I
bikes, hasn't he?
I think I don't, and this is a weird one because I don't think his power is too dissimilar from a T100 up to an Ironman because he was the second fastest bike split in Kona, like 4:01, I think it was,
Yeah.
and he was sensational. Great position, moved super quick on a bike, rode through the field, incredible fourth place in Kona. But every time we've seen him race a T100 and he's got out in front of Sam Long, you would think that Leon is the type of athlete who's strong enough to go with a Sam. But every time Sam's gone past Leon, Leon hasn't been able to react. So what I would love to see from Leon is taking a bit of confidence from Kona. If Sam starts charging past him, Leon says, F it, let's go, and just throws caution to the wind and just goes for it because Leon's a great runner.
Yeah. So you think he's bringing his Ironman power down to the T100 rather than vice versa?
Yeah, I don't think, some people, you'd say they might differ 30, 40 watts or so, 40
Yeah.
watts maybe from a T100 to an Ironman. Um, I would say Leon's is maybe more like 5 to 10, maybe. Um, which I don't think, to race at this level anyway, he's got incredible power and is an incredible athlete. But I think it maybe just highlights how good he is at Ironman, not that maybe he's lacking something in T100, if that makes sense.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. So who's your podium?
Yeah, this is a hard one.
It is a hard one, isn't it? I'm stuck on this one.
We're not gonna have the same podium.
Are we not?
And I know you're gonna say that my podium's not good, but we'll just go with it, okay? So
All right.
I think I think we're gonna see Martin Van Riel win and
Okay,
win
so
the
far.
series.
So far
So
we're
good. So
matching.
far so good. I
Yeah.
think we're gonna see Sam Long come second. Okay, and wait for it.
Sounded like Anna Haug's sidewall blowout, that, didn't it?
We're gonna see David McNamee
Oh, fuck
on his
off.
retirement race,
Fuck off.
sneak a third place podium,
I
and he's gonna
I
end on a high.
I got a lot of time for David. Great bloke, and his some of his performances over the year have been fantastic, but fuck off.
I just think yeah, if nothing else, we had to mention him because what what an athlete over the years. Had
Oh,
a solid
totally. Yeah,
Kona
yeah. His
um
last race,
last race as a professional,
announced his
yeah.
retirement.
So I feel like we had to mention him.
And an athlete that was, I think, impacted heavily by the lockdowns
Mm.
and he was really peaking in those years where the sport suffered.
And he was stuck in. Do you remember when he was running on his a balcony because he was stuck in Girona, wasn't he?
Yeah,
So he
yeah,
was he was doing like jogs along his balcony and stuff like crazy stuff because he couldn't actually leave his apartment,
yeah.
which
Not ideal.
is
We had him on the
crazy.
podcast while he was stuck in his apartment.
I don't know. Like I mentally found lockdown hard, but in the UK here we were pretty chill about being able to go out and run and cycle and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, fair play to anyone who managed to get through that. But um, yeah, I'm gonna leave David on there because why
Fair
not?
enough.
It's
No,
my
no, no.
choice.
Cool. And if it, yeah, I'm happy to double or nothing that curry that you owe me if you want on this one.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, for me, Martin Van Riel, the squishy, is gonna win and take the series victory with him. I see Carl Smith in second place.
Good
Um,
choice.
because I'd love to see that finish redone. And ah, third place, it's a tempter. It's a tempter. But I'm gonna go for my man Rico Bogan, his first podium.
Ah, I'm surprised. I thought you were gonna go the Great Dane.
You thought I
I
was gonna
thought
say Ditlev. Yeah,
yeah,
I think off the back of Kona, Ditlev might struggle to bring himself down to this distance.
fair. No, that's a and you've probably got to credit you've kind of highlighted there that three guys who've kind of stuck to their guns in terms of distances this year,
Yeah, totally.
like raced a lot of consistent T100 races, and obviously Martin did the Olympics as well. But um, yeah, good choices. I'm just I'm starting to think because we mentioned him earlier. Isn't Martin Van Riel going to be doing some Ironman training at the moment?
Yeah, but I think I would if I was him. I would be fully focused on this, and I'd throw that Iron Man in just as a bit of experience.
And if it goes well, it goes well. If it doesn't,
If it goes
then
well, it goes well. If
bit
it
of
doesn't, it
fun.
doesn't. Because he's currently leading the point standings on the men's side with 98, with Ditlev on 79, Carl Smith on 76, Sam Laidlow on 75, and Sam Lung on 74. On the women's side, Taylor Knibb is crushing everybody with 105. Ashley Gentle's got 92. India Lee's got 74. Imogen Simmons has got 66. And Laura Philipp has got 63.
So with obviously we picked podiums, but with the I guess there's races within a race, and I don't know too much about these little races, but I think the criteria for next year to get a contract was finishing top 10 in the series, I believe.
I think so.
So I think there is like these little mini races within a race, and I hope the commentary team are very cued in come the weekend so they can kind of explain to us, you know, so and so needs to beat that person to guarantee their start for next season, that sort of thing.
I hope so too, because on the women's side, you've got eighth place Paula Finley, ninth place Julie Daron, 10th place Lucy Charles-Barclay, who is not racing, Flora Duffy in 11th, Taylor Spivey in 12th, Tamara Dewar in 13th. So there's a little micro race there, and they're all within 10 points of each other in that group.
And this is
Um,
this race is worth double points or more points, isn't it?
I think so. And so, when you've got athletes scrapping for that. And Lucy Charles Barkley's not racing, so her 10th place is it,
Gone.
it must
Yeah.
be gone. And on the men's side, you've got seventh place Peter Heimerick, eighth Mika Newt, ninth Matthias Magier, 10th Rico Bogan, 11th Alistair Brownlee, 12th Frederick Funk, 13th Daniel Beckengard. And again, those athletes are all within 10, apart from Frederick Funk and Daniel Beckergaard, who drop out a bit, within 10 points of each other. So they're going to be fighting for that 10th place. Rico currently occupying that 10th place. He'll be getting a podium anyway now. So
Hey, he'll be jumping up to the top five or so,
yeah,
wouldn't he?
he's guaranteed. But yeah,
But it's crazy to see, and obviously they're based on the fact that they've done the series consistently and also their world ranking just outside of the T100. Like a lot of these guys will still be in the T100 next year, but I think it's just exciting to know, like, you finish the race on Saturday or Sunday, and based on the points right there, right then,
yeah,
right,
you've got
you've got a
yourself.
contract for next year. You're definitely racing, and for an athlete, that's quite a nice thing as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to those little mini races.
If you had if you had the offer of a T100 contract or the offer of going and racing the Ironman series, which one would you prefer? If life was just you could just choose whichever you wanted to focus on.
It's difficult. I think it's difficult for two parts because I think, as I said to you before, the big North Star for me is the World Championship in Kona. And that's something that obviously got me into the sport, and I definitely want to commit to at some point and hopefully get to. Um, but I think from a professional standpoint, I think if you got offered a T100 contract, you'd be almost crazy not to take it.
Yeah. From
There's
trying to make a living out of the sport standpoint,
yeah,
yeah.
financial stability. I think Sam Renouf said on, when it came out that if you are contracted and you meet your contractual obligation throughout the year, the worst paid person would get over 100K, which, for me right now, if someone offered me 100K, I'd bite their hand off. So
Yeah, yeah, fair
yeah,
enough.
so it's yeah, I'd say there's going to be a couple of athletes who potentially don't take contracts because they are, you know, they're seeing the 200 plus K winning the Ironman series, etc., is like a big possibility for them. But I think there'll be some very hard decisions if they were to turn them down.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I think we'll leave things, eh?
Yeah,
Thanks for
no, good
joining
chat
us, mate.
today.
Where can people find you on the internet if they want to come hunting?
Come on, Instagram, Andrew underscore H underscore T. I post semi regularly and I post some semi not boring content. But yeah, come send me a message, connect with me, and yeah, follow along. Hopefully, the next 10 years.
There we go, in the next 10 years or more. Well, thanks for listening to Talking Triathlon. If you want to support the show, jump on at patreon.com/talking triathlon. If you want to follow Tim, he's at tford14 and he's not here. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram. Tim is currently in Phuket running a futures camp for children. We are on Instagram as Talk Triathlon, not Talking. We're not on Twitter anymore or X because it sucks. If you want to join the Patreon group, get access to the monthly bonus episode and social group. Plus, we'll put you in the WhatsApp group, which is where everybody chats away constantly. And it does bring a lot of entertainment to my life. So, yeah, thanks for coming, mate. I appreciate it.
Cheers for having me. Thanks.
Cheerio.